Hi there, welcome back to the channel. So as you can see, I have my Gibson Sonex 180 Deluxe, or yeah, it's called the Deluxe, and it's working great. It sounds great. I'm going to do a sound demo on it, but it's playing great. Sounds and feels great. I love it. So what I wanted to do was just go through the videos that I made. I documented the entire process, and I want to just go through and show you what I did. There was lots of ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and so I'm hoping that it can be instructional for someone who doesn't typically go inside their guitar and work on stuff. And the only skills you really need to have are the ability to, you know, not be squeamish about what's on the inside and just get in there and go for it. And learn how to solder, you know, and some basic electronic skills. Maybe learn about electronics, how circuits work a little bit. I'm still learning all that stuff, but I've gotten to the point now where I can solder and I can like unscrew things. As far as like real luthier work, I haven't done any of that yet, as far as like getting involved in the wood process, you know, shaping the bodies. But I've now constructed a parts caster, a kit guitar, and a couple Squires that I redid, and then now this one, a Gibson. And this kind of sets me on a new path that I'm really excited about, because I've noticed on eBay and Reverb there's guys who sell like body husks of Les Pauls and Flying V's and Juniors and Explorers and whatever. And then you just sort of, and they're to varying degrees of damage. Some of them have had the headstock broken. You'd have to have that fixed. But on the ones where it's just a body, like say this was on sale with just a body and no pickguard and no electronics, you know, you get it at a discount. And then if you have the stuff lying around, or you know, you want to buy a few things here and there and you know exactly what you want to put on the guitar, it's a path towards learning how to work on guitars, getting to do it with Gibsons, and saving money, you know, and just learning. So what happened with this guitar? I bought it back in the 90s basically because I just thought it was beautiful, and still do. She's gorgeous, and she was like relic, you know, in the perfect amount of way. And relicking wasn't even a thing back then, but I just thought the wear looked cool. Thought about, you know, respraying at one point, but thank God I didn't, because I really think it gives the guitar a lot of personality. The fact that it's so beat up, it's just like a punk rock banger. But I think it has a gorgeous symmetry to the body, or asymmetry to the body, with horn on one, you know, the single cutaway. But it just looks fantastic, and I think they hit a home run with the pickguard and the zebra bobbins on the pickups. That just makes it look great. So the guitar is weird. If you know anything about these, it's made out of mahogany. Like this is a pancake body on the bottom. The top is a big thing of Resonwood, which was basically mahogany bits and some sort of chemical probably, all mashed together into some kind of like MDF type thing. So it kind of feels like a countertop. It's not like a piece of wood, like a chunk of mahogany, but it feels pretty much like that. But I think it sounds a little different, not too different. And this guitar sort of splits the difference between a Strat and a Les Paul, if that's even possible. Mainly because it has a rosewood fingerboards like a Strat. This, I believe, is pretty certain this is a maple neck with a mahogany headstock attached. The body's mahogany and the mahogany resin wood. But it's bolt-on. And the fact that it has the pickguard on top, the scratch plate, with the top route, as opposed to it being in a control cavity on the back, makes it sound a little different. And you hear a little more upper mids with this, sort of like a V in an Explorer, where the Les Paul's a little richer, thicker sounding. So what happened was I bought this guitar. I bought it with the neck pickup not working. The guy said it doesn't work, it's never worked. It's 178 bucks for the guitar. The bridge pickup works fine. And it did, and I played a show with it. And then I put it away and ended up with a Les Paul Custom within a year from that point. And so I never played it again. And I've never played it. I played one show with it. I didn't like the way it felt. The action was super low on it, and it was just nasty and felt bad. And I really did not like the pickups that come in here. And the pickups that come in the 180 Deluxe, no matter what you read on eBay or Reverb or what anybody says on forums, what I've been able to ascertain from looking at them and listening to them, these are not Dirty Fingers, and they're not Velvet Bricks by Bill Lawrence. No way. what they are is the Sonex 180 Deluxe pickups that are wound in Japan. They were wound in Japan and they're a ceramic design. I think they're basically your typical sort of hot wound pickup of the early 80s with ceramic magnets instead of Alnico, which I believe is the reason they sound so bad. And for me, you might think they sound terrific, and that's valid, but in this guitar I gave it kind of a nasty distortion, a non-euphonic sort of nasty tone that I could not abide. The neck pickup did sound a little bit better, but the neck pickup was intermittent and broken, so I decided to replace them. Thank God I did. Seymour Duncan JB in the bridge, Seymour Duncan Jazz in the neck. Classic combination. Wonderful. Guitar is a great player now, sounds good, worth owning, worth taking out, so hooray. Now, I'm going to get into the video, and what I did, like I said, is I made some, I documented every step, and I can't even remember everything I did, so I don't want to leave something out. Plus I want to divide this up into segments. I've already yapped a bunch, and that's probably not useful for the average person who's popping on here to figure out how to do something that they want to try and they want to see some video documentation. So let's do that. I'm going to go through and look at all the videos, and I'll just sort of explain what I did and how I did it. So the first goal was to get that neck pickup playing, and I figured if I just heat up the solder joint, or maybe the pot's bad, so I decided, well, the shortest path to getting it playing is to leave the pickups in, and I wanted to keep it original somewhat, and I liked the way they looked. They had the reverse bobbins where the white's on top, and it's on top here, so it's kind of cool looking. So I wanted to keep it like that, and I liked the idea of keeping guitars original, but I knew the electronics sucked. I mean, it looked like they used 24, 26 gauge wire. It wasn't ground very well, and it just, the pots were old. I mean, it's 1980. This thing comes from 1980. So, yeah, this is the original Gibson factory, 1980. And so the pots were shot, and they were trying to save money. You know, it's not like a Les Paul or something where they put the good stuff in. So the first thing I did, it has these screws on here. They're rusted out. I've since replaced them, and they weren't original. And this pickguard is not original. It's a Chandler, and you'll see the logo in a minute. All right, so what I did was I took the pickguard off, opened it up, and you can see the route in there, how it's top routed for humbuckers, and it comes down here, and it's really a good route. There's plenty of room to work with in there. And then here I am trying to reconnect this output jack, because I thought maybe the first problem is the output jack. That could be the reason why the pickup isn't working, because when you would put the cable in, it would make a lot of crackle noises. But if you go back and look at that, you can tell that the wiring was cheap, very thin, and I'll get into that in a second. But the other thing I wanted to do is I noticed from playing it acoustically, just sitting around the house and playing it acoustically, that the bridge was starting to rattle. And the bridge was a Gotoh bridge that was made for the guitar, and it's actually a fine bridge, and Gotoh makes great stuff, and it looked good, an ABR metric bridge post, but it was flipped the wrong way, the saddles were worn out, and it had one of those wires, which I just hate those things. The wires were rattling, and it was making noise, which is unacceptable. So I replaced that with a new Gotoh wireless bridge with metric posts. But I just wanted to get the guitar running. So I got some deox. I sprayed down the original pots. You can see how thin those wires are on there. Those red wires are like, I think, 26 gauge. But the bridge, like I said, had the wire that was making noise, and I'm about to replace that, but I just put it on to check the signal. So after heating up the pots, spraying on some deox, just going through, I think I even heated up the pickup a little bit where it, no, I did that later. But I kind of heated everything up, checked to make sure that it worked. It did. I raised the string height a little bit on the bridge, put everything back on again. I did, I wanted to show you really quickly, I'm noticing from this video, I'm taking the neck off. And so this is an unusual thing for a Gibson to see a bolt-on neck, and I think that's why it kind of sounds stratty. But once the neck comes off, you will see that the guy, whoever did this, shimmed it with a pickup. So here I'm taking this neck plate off, and then I take the little back plate off to reveal that neck, and there's that pickup sitting there, and I don't know what that's all about. I removed the pickup and have not had any neck issues. A lot of times people just want the lowest action possible, and he might have been trying to change the angle, you know, to lift it up from the back. I have no idea. I thought about leaving it in there, and I did put it back in and kind of reset the guitar up with it in. But when I took it out and set up the guitar, I just didn't see any reason for it. And that's not really the proper way to shim a neck. You know, you would never do that with a Strat. I mean, people do, but you want a proper shim when you do that. Otherwise, the neck over time, you know, can wear incorrectly, and you could have setup issues. But I think the guitar looks really cool. Here I'm kind of just scanning over the guitar. I think the guitar looks really cool the way it's sort of chucked up and sort of relic looking. And I really at this point feel no desire to do anything different. Yeah, that's where that little pickguard shim was located between those two bottom screws. And like I said, I just removed it. But the back has like the nice amount of wear. It still has plenty of paint and everything, so it's covered on the back, but it just has like it almost looks like somebody went in and did a relicking job on it. It's really, really cool. So I have felt no desire to change anything like that. And there's the headstock. And the headstock has this the Gibson company, because these guitars were, and there's the rosewood fretboard. The frets have a little bit of wear up there at the top, you know, where you make chords, but nothing too bad. And the good thing about this guitar is it would be easy to refret it. You wouldn't have to worry about fret nibs or anything like that. And because it's already, you know, pretty beat up, you wouldn't have to worry about anybody messing it up. There's the back of the neck. You can see all the wear and everything. And I believe that neck is maple. So I did my usual cleanup job. I used some olive oil, a little bit of coconut oil. It's kind of like a detergent. And then later I rubbed some shea butter into the rosewood fretboard to sort of just condition it. Wiped it all down, got it all cleaned up, and everything was feeling good. And I was getting excited. I also went in and fixed all the where the strap buttons go in. Those are all stripped out. I got some new Dunlop, those are real fat ones. I like those a lot. They're like the size of a Strat. And so what I do with these, typically when these are broken out, is I'll take like a wood skewer, like a bamboo skewer, stick it down in there real deep, you know, and then just kind of break it off. Then I'll usually add a little Titebond. If I know I'm going to do a one and done deal, I'll go ahead and put some Titebond in there. If I'm just testing, or if I'm not sure about the locks I'm using or the buttons I'm using, I won't put any glue in. But here, because I knew I was going to use these nice Dunlops, I went ahead and glued it up. And I actually did this twice. And when I went back in with the Dunlops, I had bigger screws, and that really helped. It really got in there. So here I am cleaning up the glue all around it. Just getting that. You can see it's very simple to do, and you should always do this whenever you have a strap button that's slipping, because it'll slip out at the most inopportune time. And as far as Gibsons go, you don't want to risk that because you don't want to break your headstock. So I always recommend getting those strap buttons secured so that you don't damage your guitar. And so then I just kind of rubbed down the body, got it clean, and I was really pleased, really looking good. I put my beautiful Diodero NYXLs on it and got the thing playing really nicely. But through all of the machinations, taking the pickguard off, testing things, doing this, doing that, I suddenly, because the neck pickup of course stopped working. As soon as I got the guitar all set up, I'm playing, everything's great, plug it in, neck pickup's dead, just like before. So I'm like flummoxed, you know, great. That means I got to break back into this thing and start over. So all of my taking the pickguard off, putting it back on again, trying to figure out what was wrong, I broke the ground wire. And the ground wire was super thin, way thin. I usually like to see like an 18 all the way up to like a 14 gauge, especially in hi-fi. Now in guitars, there's not a ton of room in the routes for the big thick wires, and you're passing so little signal that the gauge is not as important as it is when you're working with, you know, higher voltage stuff or long distances. Like say a speaker distance from an amp to a speaker, that can be, you know, 20 feet or whatever. So that makes a difference. But in a guitar, we're talking, you know, millimeters, inches, centimeters, short distances. So the gauge isn't always that big of a thing, but I just like the idea of having a little thicker gauge wire. So what I did was I removed the wire that was in there that was broken by lifting up the stud anchor on the stop post. And that's where they had, sometimes they'll ground and put that ground wire in the bridge post. This one was down in the stop piece. And I kind of developed this really cool tool from an Instructable. I'm really excited about this. So basically what you do is you get an M8 bolt, you get sort of a copper tubing thing like for plumbing, and then a washer that goes on top of that so that the bolt that has its own sort of built-in washer will ride on that. And then you go into your stud anchor, because see, I had to remove that so I could ground it with the wire. You know, you got to stick it down in the wood, shove that thing in there, and then that runs through a hole which then grounds to your neck tone pot. So how to get that stop anchor piece out? Not the easiest thing in the world, and I'll show you how to do it. So you go in with that M8 bolt, right? So you're going to screw it in. You put that copper tube inside the bolt. Then you run and then the washer's on top of that so that that M8 bolt can turn freely on top of that. Then you go in to the stop anchor post, like with the bolt, and you got the whole contraption on there. And you can also put another washer on the guitar if you're worried about it chucking up the wood. I wasn't too worried about this one, but you can see that I've got it down on that piece with a washer. And then you just really tighten it down so that you can feel it go down into that stud anchor. And then you just pull the whole thing up and it pops right out. That was kind of a faker. I'd already done it, but I just wanted to show how it was done. But it popped out with a little bit of resistance, but not much. I was stunned that it worked so well. So that was exciting, and I highly recommend that. That was like a couple bucks at the hardware store. Instead of having to buy some kind of stud anchor puller, you know, that's like 30, 40, 50 bucks from StewMac. Not that those aren't great tools, but if you're on the cheap and you want to do something quickly, don't have time to wait for a part to get here, this little DIY method works great. So I did my thing with that, and then I had to run a new ground wire, and I decided to use, I think it was either a G string or a B string. I think it might have been a G string. And what I did was I ran the wire, so once you get that thing back down in that stud anchor, before you put it in there, I started with using 22 gauge wire. That didn't work well. But you run that through this, and you can see what I'm doing here. I'm running it through the cavity, and then I have and that's showing the old wire, and then you just push your stud anchor down onto the exposed wire so that the metal from the stud anchor makes good contact with that wire. The wire then runs through the route and then is grounded to the pot. And what I like to do is I just don't like to leave bare metal, you know, just in case something were to make contact with it. Here I'm using a rubber mallet to sort of pound that stud anchor back into place. And you got to be careful with that as well. Maybe put a washer around there, so or a towel, like a towel. You could just put a towel down, or like a piece of cloth, just so you don't, you know, bang your paint. Once again, this is kind of a beater, and this finish is, you know, a flat finish. So here I am running this wire through, and what I usually do is I cut it there so it was long enough to reach that pot, especially when you kind of close the top with the scratch plate. Then I got some heat shrink tubing, and I just run it down. I think that's a B string. It looks like a B string, from an 11 gauge set, so it'd be like a, I don't know, like a 13 or whatever. Okay, so I'm running enough heat shrink tubing down to cover that wire. Like I said, I don't want exposed wire in there, just in case it made contact with the one of the pots or just any other metal. It would, you know, ground out the guitar. So I then take my heat shrink gun and shrink it so that it, you know, sticks to the metal. And one of the things you can do here that's even faster than a heat shrink gun is to just take your soldering iron and just kind of go along and touch it, and it just shrinks right to the metal. I started doing that after this did not work as well on this thin wire, and it wasn't one long piece, which is a better way to do it, so it's kind of slipping off. Okay, so I got the ground wire back on, got that soldered back on, and I'm still trying to get this pickup to work, which is the big original problem. You know, I bought this not working. I put a new Switchcraft switch on. I knew that had to be replaced, so and you have to make sure with the Sonex that you get the right angle one. The straight up and down one is too deep. It might work, I didn't test it, but it came with a right angle one, so I bought a right angle one, and I'm glad that I did, because there's not tons of room in that route, you know, for that. Whereas on a real Les Paul, they dig a pretty big hole, or drill a pretty big hole for that switch to go in, whereas that's not the case here. So now you can see I've got the original wiring, original pots, that thin little wire, the original green caps. I went and got me some nice CTS 500K pots. I got that nice Switchcraft jack. So I've got all new, shiny, brand new stuff. So the goal was to now rewire. I figured that that pickup was probably being affected by the pot. You know, maybe that's all it is. And once I do a rewire, because you know the bridge was working. So once I do a rewire as far as new pots, new wire, new solder, you know, the whole new thing, and you can see me here actually putting the bridge pickup into place. And this, the wiring that I chose to use is 50s wiring, and you go to that first, the lug on the right hand of the pot, and in the middle pot is the capacitor, which then connects with the right hand lug on the other, on your tone pot. So it's a different way to wire than the modern wiring. It's less quiet, I think, because everything sort of you know, intertwines in a way, and I think that's why modern wiring came into play, is like better separation, like a quieter way, and gets quieter between songs, and you can separate the tone pots. But I prefer modern wiring. It keeps your guitar from losing treble as you roll back, and it just has a tone that I really appreciate. Here I'm doing my star ground. I'm going all the way around and grounding the pots together. You ground those 3 pots by connecting them. And then and so far it looks clean. Later that got a little glopped up with solder. Then you have to ground out the middle pot there and make sure that it's ground to the pot. This is all 50s wiring concepts. It would be different if you were doing modern wiring, but I highly recommend this 50s wiring. So now I'm soldering that ground there, connecting those 3 pots. And you can see how that works, and I've got each one grounded out and in the correct position. Now, let's see what I do next here. Now I'm adding a little solder, probably to get that other pickup. Oh no, that's to connect the capacitors. Okay, so now the wiring is being completed. You can see that I finished the ground all the way around, the 3 grounds. The caps are back in place, and those are the original green caps. I ended up upgrading those with orange drops. But those are the original caps that came with it. I ended up putting those in the original part stash. So the wiring was going well. It was nice and clean. Everything was going well at this point. Here I've got a new, and that was a stereo jack. I ended up not using that one. It was the only one I could find that day at the store, and if you just wire it mono, it works the same way. But I ended up going back and getting another one, but I might use that stereo jack for another reason. We'll get to that later for a little mod. You can do kind of interesting mod tricks if you have a stereo jack. But so then I'm rewiring the jack, doing a little twist there to resist. So you see how the hot and ground are twisted, a mild twist. So there's the pots. I got it mounted on the scratch plate. Got my new switch. It's cream. It matches the bobbins. You can see how that's mounted. And I actually need to move that because it's kind of in an awkward spot. Then I'm going to wire up here. This is probably the last ground. Yeah, this is the last ground I'm doing here. But everything was looking so clean and nice at this point, if it just had not been for that doggone neck pickup. But I'm glad that it happened the way it did, because it moved me into the world of Seymour Duncan. Here I am finishing up the last of the wiring to get that ready to go. And everything was looking good and clean. I'm pleased that my soldering skills have gotten better. I did have a disaster, you know, with this wiring. I ended up having to replace a pot, but that was only after I went through a major troubleshooting thing with this other pickup. So I do think I've improved a little bit. There's that pickguard. You can see it's made by the Chandler Company in San Francisco, and they make really good pickguards. It has 2 extra holes, and I've put kill switches in there, momentary and another switch, or a latching kill switch, and now I'm going to put a momentary in the other spot. Right now there's a mini switch there. Could be a blower switch, but it's a cool way to get a couple little extras in there and take up the space on the pickguard. Okay, so what happens here? Still wiring, finishing up everything on this, getting the pickguard back in place. I ended up getting new screws, but I put the old screws in, and what I'm doing here is putting one string on and just testing to make sure that I was passing signal, you know, so that I don't waste a bunch of time putting it all back together or waste a set of strings. You know, you could break a string if you have to keep removing. And I was really excited here. I thought I had it. You can see I'm thumbs up. Everything was good, ready to rock, you know. And so then I start putting the screws back in. And these are the original rusty screws, which look kind of cool. But then when I put I put a replacement screw on, and the pop of it just made me want to get some new screws and make the whole thing pop. And then I'm kind of moving the pickup wires around to get it flush to the body. I bought a couple of new speed knobs because 2 of mine were broken, but I did keep some of the original ones on the guitar. 2 of them are original, or at least the ones that came with the guitar, and they look old and good instead of like cheap. But I'm installing and it's a split shaft pot, so you just sort of press down with the palm of your hand and get them secure. And so then I got the strings on, everything was working. Once again, the neck pickup goes. So now I'm breaking it back out again, and look at that, the culprit there is that neck pickup. Taking it out of its mount, and it has this funky mount that's a 3-screw mount. And so I took it off and I heated up the ground there, and I also heated up the hot side, and I could tell that the plastic was a little compromised there, and there could be a break somewhere, in the winding inside. I don't know. But that pickup made me suffer because it kept working and then not working, very intermittent. And I thought I was done. I thought I had a finished guitar until that neck pickup kept giving me trouble. And at first, when I took it out, as you can see from the footage, and did a little heat up, it worked again, and I thought I was home free. But then after playing it for a while and going up to the neck pickup, it suddenly went dead again. So I'm going to call this episode 1. We'll leave it here, and when I do this part 2, we'll pick up from where we left off, because at that point I had to make a decision. Should I just play it with the one pickup working and not put any more money or time into it, or do I get a set of pickups, get this thing running once and for all, and have a good guitar, and put a few bucks into it? And I decided to do that, and I'll get into what happened next. Basically, I installed the pickups. I had to remove a pot that was still the culprit, and then I finally got the thing running, and here we are with a great guitar to play, a real Gibson, and it didn't cost much, and I learned a lot, which is the whole point, right? And I hope this will give you some confidence, because I don't have any training. I'm not a luthier by any means. Don't even have any real qualifications or anything, but I like to work on stuff, and I like to put my own spin on things and put my own blood, sweat, and tears into it, so that it helps me craft my sound and inspire me. Next time.